I want to thank you for tuning in and joining us. We wanted to take this opportunity to kind of get together and to share. We have been absolutely devastated, outraged, and just broken at the injustice that we have seen in our nation over the past weeks and months in cases like George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Christian Cooper. And these things have brought to light and exposed an undercurrent of racism in our nation that needed to be exposed, but we can't just ignore it. We cannot unsee the images that we've seen, and we need to have some sort of response. We need to have conversations. And we were at the church the other day, and just so happened that we ended up sitting down, having a conversation. And as we did, it blessed me so much. It brought so much life, so much hope to me that we wanted to figure out a way that we could share that conversation with you and model what a conversation in community in a safe space can look like, because we believe that's the beginning of hope and change in our community locally and around our nation as well. So we wanted to take this time. Josh and I asked Jessica Broughton and Eric Pope to join us in sharing, not because we think that they represent all Black people, but because they are people we do life with. Jessica is on our staff. She is our team director. She's been on our staff for 7 years, and she is somebody I see every day of my life. Eric is a graduate of our ministry school. He is one of our worship leaders at our church, and these are people that we have relationship with, we do life together with. And so we want to hear from them. We want you to hear from them, and we want to open our minds and our perspective today.
And we wanted to take this opportunity to address this issue because we didn't get a chance to do it because our Sunday morning messages are pre-recorded, and we thought that this would be the best way for us to talk about this issue because we believe that conversation is the conduit for change. You know, there's a story in John chapter 4 that I love. It says that Jesus was on his way to Galilee, and it says that he had to go through Samaria. But Jesus didn't have to go through Samaria. In fact, no Jew would go through Samaria. In fact, they would go all the way around to avoid going through Samaria because there was a deep-seated hatred that Jews had for Samaritans. And it goes all the way back to when the Assyrians conquered and took over the northern kingdom of Israel. And they began to intermarry with the Assyrians, creating the Samaritan culture. And so the Jews viewed the Samaritans as half-breeds. They were marginalized and discriminated against. And so Jesus said that he had to go through, that Jesus was going there to intentionally address the racism that existed. And he meets this woman at the well, and he says, "Give me a drink." And Jesus didn't have a cup. And she's like, "You don't have anything to get with," which meant that Jesus was willing to drink from her cup. And that is so powerful and so profound. And that's what we need in this moment the most. I think we need to be willing to drink from somebody else's cup, to learn from somebody else's experience, their past, their point of view, so that we can have understanding, empathy, and compassion. And so with that, I would like to just jump right into some of the questions that I have prepared. When you hear stories of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and even Christian Cooper, how do you feel?
I'm just gonna dive in.
I know. For me, that's a very heavy question because with Ahmaud, he was doing nothing and got killed. And then with George Floyd, he was tried and convicted and killed on the sidewalk. And then you have Christopher Cooper that was just trying to watch birds. And I'm just tired because I always feel like when those cases come up, I have to defend the victim. Mm-hmm. So with Ahmaud, it's like, well, what was he doing at this? It's like, well, we always have to look at the context of things. People are like, well, what's the whole story? Mm-hmm. But if it was a vice versa and a white guy got killed by 2 black guys just by jogging in the neighborhood, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Not at all.
And so I always feel like you have to give the context, and people are like, well, we don't have the whole story. That's another thing. I'm like, well, do we need the whole story with Ahmaud? I don't care if he was running down the street with a television in his hand. Like, why is it that people can feel like, well, I'm gonna become the police myself, and then that's okay? Like, so I think for me, it brings up a lot of anger. It brings up a lot of, I'm just exhausted and tired, because I feel like, oh, here's another one we gotta defend, because even when it comes out, the problem would be the news would bring up past stuff they've done in the past. Well, Ahmaud, he got arrested in high school for shoplifting. He's 25. What happened 6 years ago? What they have to do with what happened to him in the streets? So I feel like as a culture, those things just bring up just like, oh, here we go again, because it's the same narrative. I feel like as a person of color in this country that it happens, but now I got to defend. And I always personally feel like the victim never has a voice. And we have to fight for them to have a voice. And it just gets exhausting.
So for me, my initial feeling and emotion is always anger, because there's a deep connection, because those guys look like me. And I always think that could have been me. That could have been my brothers. That could have been some of my friends. And so, it makes me feel exhausted, kind of like what Jess said. I'm tired of going through emotions, and there's also some kind of like numbness that goes on, because like, unfortunately, this has become like a regular thing. So like, when people are like, how you feel about it? I don't feel no more, you know? I'm just tired, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of, like you said, defending the victim. Like, nobody deserves to die on the street, you know? Like, try me in court before you kill me, you know? So I just get tired of defending the victim, and I get tired of the emotions that come with it. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about those situations.
Yeah, I think the exhaustion of it is something that I hadn't really wrapped my brain around until lately, and hearing you guys share just here we go again, here we go again, here we go again. And that is something that, even just having to justify and explain your feelings constantly, how exhausting that is, I remember just going through a time where things were chaotic in our life, and every time somebody asked, how are you? And I'm like, okay, here we go again, So to experience that year after year, not just for a season, but for your entire life.
But I also think it comes to, like, for some people, this is new. But it's with those names you just said out loud, it's so many people before that.
Most recent ones.
So these are like, this is 2020, but let's talk in the last 2 and 3 years, and we can name, Eric Gardner, we can name Mike Brown, we can name so many names, Sandra Bland, it's so many other names before this. It's just like, so when people say, oh, but this is just new to you. To a whole different set of people, is something that's been going on for a very long time, and that adds to the exhaustion, because they're like, well, now race is a big thing to you. Let's like emphasize to you, because for some people it's every day. It's every single day. And so
what's happening has been happening. It's just now being put on film for the world to see. And it's gotten to a place where we can't ignore it any longer. We're being forced to look at it every day and to see it for what it really is.
And to contemplate our role in it. How am I ignoring? How am I exposing? What am I doing? What's my response?
Yeah.
That's good.
Why do you think there is so much anger behind the recent incidents that have led to protests and riots in our nation?
I just feel like some people are just fed up, when you see justice not being served. Like, I can't turn to the police anymore. I can't turn to the justice system anymore, because I've been doing that. I've been speaking out against it, and nothing is happening. Like, nothing is changing. Nobody's being held accountable. So, everybody vents differently. Everybody handles things differently. And like I said, I can understand why it's going on, I don't necessarily condone it, but I could definitely understand why somebody would be doing that right now. And we get tired of the fact that, man, it's not enough for me to just be like a nice guy in society. I have to be triple nice. I have to go above and beyond, because I can do everything right. You've seen most of these cases, you can do everything right, and things still just don't turn out the way they're supposed to turn out. Yeah. So, yeah, I just think people are fed up with it.
Well, I think if you protest peacefully, they got something to say. If you kneel on an NFL field, they tell you not to kneel. If you, hold in marches, that's an issue. So my question to people, how do you want us to protest? Now, I do not condone looting and rioting. I do not, but like EJ said, I get it. People are like, I can't do it right, because I do it right, you have something to say. So why can't I just do it wrong? And I also think with the looting and the rioting, there's some people that are really angry and they're trying to express it. And there's just some people with evil intentions, like, shucks, they want to get some TVs, I'm gonna get me some TVs. Like, it's like that. And so
there's always an opportunity.
Yeah. But I think we don't condone it, but at the same time, we get it. It's like the child that keeps calling their mama's name and the mother never acknowledges the child. And so I'm gonna do something until you acknowledge me, because there needs to be an acknowledgement. And that's what's happening all across this country, like an acknowledgement that this is just enough. We can't take anymore. We can't do anymore. We can't say anymore. That it's just to a point where, like, some people look at violence as the answer. Again, we're not saying violence is the answer, but I understand why they think that, because we've done everything right and still nothing has changed.
Yeah. Proverbs says that hope deferred makes the heart sick. And there has been a hope and a cry for justice that has fallen on deaf ears time and time and time again. And so when that continually happens, it's going to happen that way, because there has to be justice, and what you're seeing is the outrage, the frustration, the anger. It's boiling over. We're seeing right now is just the tipping point for things that have been happening for years. And so I know that I've had conversations with people that have said, well, the officer and the people have been arrested. And what we're seeing right now is not just about what's happening right now. It's about everybody else that did not get justice, and we still don't know how this thing is going to currently turn out and work out,
Yeah. I mean, you have to fight to get people arrested. Yeah. And that's where, people say, well, you have black on black crime. That is very true. And that's something that I know that as a community we are aware of. But when two black people kill each other, one person go to prison. Yeah. When a mob killers or murderers can go home and for 3 months do nothing. Right. And they film a video on their side and it get leaked, and that's the only reason why they get arrested, there's a problem. Yeah. There's a problem. And so it's a thing of, we just want the same thing that we would want, because if somebody commit a crime, we want them to go to jail. Exactly. That we're not asking you not to send them to jail. We just be fair about it, because a life is a life, and so that's.
George Floyd is supposedly accused of check fraud, right? He's executed in the street, and then you have a white man who goes into a church and kills 8 or 9 black people, and he's taken to go get Burger King before he goes to jail.
That's the part that hurts. It's like that's what hurts. It's like there's no accountability. Yeah. How is that even, for face value, how is that even like fair, for somebody to go into a church and murder people and then get taken to get something to eat? That's a spit in the face, Yeah.
And that's why people are so angry and so outraged. And that's what we're
How could they
seeing.
not be?
Yeah, absolutely.
How could you not be?
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who doesn't think that racism exists, or that it's only something that happens in rare, isolated events like the cases that we just mentioned?
I would say, talk to someone you love that is a person of color, and I would guarantee you they would tell you that racism still exists. I think the problem with that issue is that because these little instances, with those individuals, this is how I view it. White people are viewed as individuals, and black people is already generalized in one group. So when a crime happens, that's that individual. He represents him. But when something is the opposite, all black people are this. And so it's like individual collectively. That's how it's like viewed. And so I would just say that you're just unaware. There's an ignorance there. And that you just need to talk to people that you love, especially because a lot of people say, well, I have friends that are people of color. Then you need to really ask them how they really feel about that. Yeah. You know, you really need to have a conversation and really hear from people you love, because that's what's going to change your mind. It's not people you have no relationship with. It's that person you would say, I go to church with them, I hug them, I love them. Then have a conversation with them and ask them, does racism exist? And let them share their story with you and see if you still have the same answer at the end of that conversation. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would just like to piggyback off her, man. Just ask your black friends, ask your black co-workers, like, is there still racism here? And like she said, I definitely believe that they will say that it is. It may look different, but you know, sly remarks, jokes, rude looks, like that's what it mostly is. I know in my life, that's what it is. You know, people assume things. Like when I show up with a group of white people, they're like, are you with them or are you kind of by yourself? You know, things like that. It's just,
I'll never forget when we went to go do Sunday evening with our neighbors, you were serving with our church and they tried to make you go through the food line at the time the people were going simply because you were black.
You know, multiple things like that have happened. And I think for me, I just swept it under the rug because I try to live so unoffendable. But then things boil up, you know, and that's not how I want to live my life, you know. I don't want to live with anger and resentment for white people, you know. So I think it's important for you to have those conversations with your black friends, and don't be afraid of it because you may feel like offended and don't get instantly defensive, you know. Hear them, like be ready to just hear them, like let me speak, you know. And don't listen to respond, you know. Just listen, like be with me, sit with me.
Don't be so defensive. You know, I think the hard thing is when you love people, and you know, like I would not think of myself as having, you know, those racist thoughts or feelings or whatever, but if there's something that I do that projects that, even if it's against what's in my heart, I need to be open to hearing how it looks, to hearing how it affects those around me. Because if I'm not, then I will continue to perpetuate the problem. And instead, I have to be responsible for how my words, my actions, my lack of words affects those around me. And I think that has been so important and so valuable to understand, and that's why the conversation has to happen in the context of people you love and do community with. Don't assume because you do life together that there is an understanding of mutual love and respect, but ask, have the conversation, talk about it.
And I think one of the reasons why many people don't think that exists because they only tend to think of racism in terms of overt racism, like in this circumstance with George Floyd, like in these obvious, and then they ignore the more subtle ways, the microaggressions, the, like you said, the looks, being followed in stores because you're black. They don't have to have the conversations with their kids about when you get pulled over by the police, you have to put your hands on the steering wheel and you can't move. And those conversations aren't working because it's still happening. It doesn't matter what they do, how they act. And because they're not having to have those conversations with their kids, they don't think that it's an issue because they're not being affected by it. And it just goes to show us, if you don't think it's an issue, this just goes to show you the privilege that you have. All right, let's go. Let me look at my question right here. Okay, here we go. All right, we'll turn the corner, get a little more positive here. All right. All right. With the events that have taken place over the last couple weeks, I know that many white people want to help. They want to be a part of the solution, but they don't know what to do. So what can the white community do to help?
I would say to begin, I would say to have conversations with people face to face or text messages, phone call, before you get to posting things and, tackling social media, because it can be very hard to gauge authenticity on social media. Like say for instance, me and this one person has not talked in months, but all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, you want to post social, things on Facebook about, maybe me or just black people in general. It just doesn't come off as authentic if we've never had that one-on-one conversation.
Yeah, if you're having those, if you're posting on social media, but you're not actually having the real conversations behind the scene, it doesn't come across as genuine.
Yeah, I'd say that's one thing to do. Yeah, and also, man, just speak up about it. Don't be afraid to lose friends or business partners because you support something like this. So that's what I feel like is like the first couple steps.
And I know that one of the reasons why many white people don't speak out is not because they're afraid of losing friends or because they don't believe strongly about the issue, but it's that they're afraid of saying the wrong thing because it is such a volatile situation that they don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I will say some people, like I've had conversations, across the table, and even maybe our post didn't come out soon enough. And the hesitancy is on my part is, man, I want to live this in front of people. I don't post much on social media unless it's a funny picture of my kid or something like that. I don't post happy birthday to people because I'm afraid I'm going to offend somebody else, but that I didn't say happy birthday to them last month, And so I didn't know where my voice was, when it should come out, but then there comes a point where you have to say something, because it is the culture in which we live. There is a spotlight through social media. What do you think? And so when you don't say anything, unfortunately, the assumption is that you are just floating with the stream of those thoughts, of those feelings, that you are a bystander, even if your actions, even if your heart is not in alignment with that. You have to prove it through your words, because otherwise the assumption is, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily right or fair, but I know we need to say, you have to say something.
And I think what you guys did, what it did was it made people who look like me and Jessica in your congregation feel like you care about us. Even if you didn't say the right things, it just like, okay, they support me, they hear me. And they value me,
So even if we don't say it perfectly or have the exact right thing today, just the fact that we are trying to give voice to what you're feeling and experiencing, that's what matters the most.
And it's like when somebody dies and you go to a funeral, most people don't know what to say. They don't want to say the wrong thing. But when you think about it, that person that is receiving that love, they just remember who was present. And that's the same thing here. Like, the people that are present in my life, I do life with, like they have shown me love in this time, I will remember that. I'm not gonna hold it against other people that like, oh, you didn't send me a text or do all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying we post about so many other things. Like we post about a game, we post about where we go out, work out, we post about all these things. When something that is happening all over our world and we choose to be silent about it, that speaks volumes, and
even if you didn't intend it.
Yeah. And so it's so many people, like when you guys posted, was just saying, oh, I'm so thankful that they posted, like I'm thankful that you stood up for me, because they were waiting for that too, especially as leaders as a church. They were waiting for like somebody to say something, because if the church can't talk about it, then who can talk about it? Like, people are looking at us to say, what is the body gonna do? Because that's where we should show love regardless of the situation, because of Jesus and because we are brothers and sisters in Christ. So I would say that. And I think too, to go to that other part of your question, is just educate yourself. And so I'm gonna give a tip. Don't call all your black friends and ask them tips, like what books and podcasts. I mean, they might be open to that, but also be a sensitivity. This is just a tough time right now. Yeah. So just Google stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, listen to a podcast, pick up a book and read it. And if you have questions, then bring it to that person. Because now, you know, if you come to me and put the responsibility to find resources for you, now I have a burden to go look for stuff and research stuff for you. That's not my job. You know, if you want to know, educate yourself. And then if you have questions, I'll talk all day from my perspective. Yeah. But
yeah, I don't represent every black man. You know, I have my own personal experiences. Yeah. I can give you I can give you answers based on my life and my experiences. I don't think I'm responsible for an entire race. But yeah, man, I say, you know, do some research and then come to me with a question that you have. Also, educate your kids. Like have conversations with your kids and maybe your younger siblings, because they're the ones that's gonna like really make change. You know, going forward, they're gonna stop this going forward, man. Yeah, and also just stand with me. You don't have to have all the answers. Like, I just need somebody to listen to me. Stand with me, and I want to know that if it happened to me, that you will be able to fight with me too, and like just have my back. So that's another thing that you guys can do. Just listen, and don't be defensive, and just stand with me. So
that's good. All right, what are some things that white people are saying or doing that aren't helping the situation, but they're actually making it worse?
And the minds are reeling.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say, again, hashtag all lives matter. That's a no-no, especially if you're trying to reach somebody. Let me tell you something. We know all lives matter. We definitely know white people lives matter. So, but right now we're concentrating on a group of people, African Americans, particularly men, that we have seen the narrative over and over again. And I'm telling you, we can sit down, we can pull out statistics, facts, stories of what is happening, been happening in our country. So we're trying to, that's what Black Lives Matter, that movement is to me, is saying, we want to say to this group, you do matter, because that's what's showing up in our society. And so we understand every human being is important to God, but so are black men who are dying on the street. And that's one thing about George Floyd. I never watch videos. It's something that is just, you know, it can be very disturbing. But I made myself watch George Floyd video, and I would tell you that was the hardest 10 minutes of my life, to watch somebody die and not be seen as a human, but be seen as something that can be just tossed aside and get up and walk off, and their lives should go as normal. Yeah. When someone is begging for help, begging for their life, and you choose not to do nothing, that's just, yeah, it destroyed me as a person. And so I forgot where I was going.
And that's why we're saying, yeah.
Sorry about that.
You're fine. And that's what we mean. That's what the movement means when it says Black Lives Matter, because that should never happen to any human being.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and the Black Lives Matter it's based on the principle that all lives matter, but this particular group of people is hurting.
Neglected.
They are suffering injustices,
Right.
and they're not getting justice.
Yeah, and I would also say, man, the use of social media, man, it can be a great thing. But I do believe that sometimes some white people can like just go do a little bit too much, to where it seems like you're overcompensating for something. Like you're trying to just check off your box of, yeah, I got a black friend, so if I keep posting about Black Lives Matter and these events that are happening, that I'm good in the black community. And I could be totally wrong, man, because some people have really true intentions, but it's very hard on social media to gauge authenticity. Yeah. If you don't have a relationship with somebody, like if you haven't talked to that person in person, like face-to-face, text message, phone call, but then you flood social media with these hashtags, and it's like, I have not felt that support until now, you know? So that's why social media is it's a good thing, but it can be tricky, because I don't know if it's genuine, you know.
Yeah. And the thing is, we're playing a long-term game. Yeah. People everybody just feel uncomfortable now, so they want short-term solutions. Yeah. This is a multiple conversation theme. This is how I'm gonna raise my kids. This is how can I show up and protest or change the laws that need to be changed? How do we change the perception of Black people in America that has just been, you know, we grew up with seeing it on TV and told all these things. And so this is a long-term game. This is not tomorrow we'll have a solution and we go on to the next thing. I think that's what's hard about social media. This is a hot topic, so let's everybody be on it. But what happens 2 months from now? 3 months from now, you know, are we still talking about it? Are you still talking to your friends? Are you still educating yourself? Or are you only doing it in the moment because it's hot and this is what everybody's talking about? So this is not something that is going to change overnight. Slavery didn't change overnight. Civil rights movement didn't happen overnight. This is not going to happen overnight either. It's just it's a long-term game.
I want to speak again about the All Lives Matter. Like for me, when someone responds to something I say or somebody says about Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter, I feel like what it did for me was it totally negated everything that I had said prior. And it made me feel like you didn't value me. Like you only value what I could bring to the table, but you didn't value who I am as a person. You know, that's what All Lives Matter as your first response. That's what it does to me, I feel.
Yeah. I was going to say, you shared with us yesterday about, like, as a worship leader, like how that kind of affected you.
Yeah. So what it does is it kind of messes up my view of the church, because it's like, no, you stay over there and you sing. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to really know you. I don't really want the responsibility of knowing all of you and being friends with a Black guy. Wow. I just want what you can give me. I just want what you can do for me. I just want you to sing a song, stay over there and sing, and don't talk about nothing else. You know, and that's dehumanizing to me, because you don't want all of me. You just want my talents. Yeah. You know.
And again, this isn't like, it's not saying that people don't necessarily feel that way, right, but it's how it projects and makes you feel, and that, God, we need to be aware of that. That is the point of this, is we need to hear these feelings. We need to understand. We need to know, you know, and I'm thankful for your courage in being able to share that with us. Yeah. It's huge.
I think that one of the things that people overlook is racial insensitivity. So when like an issue like this is being brought to light and it's talked about, and then somebody else wants to bring up another issue, like what about Black on Black crime, or what about this other situation, and it's deflecting the focus that needs to be on these very real issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when people say all lives matter, to me that's like telling somebody to shut up. Like, oh, all lives matter, so you just need to be quiet. You just need to sit down and be quiet. Yeah. And then that doesn't encourage me to have a conversation with you at all, because you're not listening, and that's the hard part. You was reading something, but you didn't get the heart of it. You didn't understand the words behind it.
You know, Providence Church is a predominantly white church, and one of the things I love about our church is that we are becoming more and more diverse, and our goal is to have a church that reflects the community that we're in. And with that, I would like to ask you, what are some of the struggles you face being a part of a predominantly white church?
I would say at some points there's a disconnection. Sometimes I feel like I cannot be fully myself, because if I expose too much of me, then it won't sit well with them. That has been my experience in the past, like when I first kind of started attending Providence, and sometimes it leads me to ask the question: if I wasn't on stage, if I wasn't like a worship leader, would they care about me? Like would they care about a connection with me?
Well, has there ever been a time where you have experienced racism or prejudice being a part of our church?
Yeah. So one day, me and my brother were in the lobby, and both of us are tall, both of us are Black, and one woman, she asked if that was my brother, and I said, yeah, it's my brother. She said, oh yeah, I knew y'all had to be related because all of y'all look alike, you know. And then I instantly felt really kind of small, and it kind of made me feel like, whoa, hold on, like, where are we? This is 2019, like, what are we doing? And then she continued to dig herself in a deeper hole by saying, no, I'm not racist. I've dated colored boys before. And it just made the situation worse. And she also proceeded to say, I think me and you are gonna have a great relationship. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't think so, you know. And they're like, and also one day we were at a worship practice, and a woman was sitting there. I don't know. First of all, I don't know how she was at the practice. You know, she walks in, she sits down, and she's hearing us sing, and she asked me about a song that I normally sing, that is more gospelly, you know. And she asked me, what's the name of that song? You know, the Negro spiritual song that y'all sing. And again, like, what happens is I kind of feel a little bit smaller, because I try to be so unoffendable, and it took somebody from the outside who witnessed it to kind of encourage me to step up and confront it, you know, because I always believe that everything is not an educating moment, but I can't just let it keep happening, because if I don't say anything, it's going to keep happening to people who look like me. So those are just a couple of them. So
I don't know. I think for me, it's more of just always have to remind myself to look at people's intentions, because again, you follow people on social media and you're like, oh, this is what you really think. But yet you see me on Sunday and it's just like, oh, you know, I love you. And so I try to remind myself, just to remember their character, remember who they are. I try to attach something positive, because I don't want any bitterness to like seep into my heart around it, because my heart is just to serve people. So I think that's the struggle of not probably fully giving yourself, or having to over explain things, you know, like, oh, you know, nowadays I change my hair up all the time, but it's a constant explaining around it. And so, but I also grew up in like probably predominantly white, somewhat diverse. So it's something I think I'm used to. So like hearing you speak is totally different experience. I think I just adjusted because that's been my life story. But it's just reminding myself to look at people's intentions. That's the most struggle I have, I think, because everybody are not looking at it from my perspective.
yeah, sometimes it gets exhausting trying to explain every single detail about why you wear your hair like this, or why you wear those type of shoes, or, you know, it can be something as simple as like the way I dress, you know, because I have had people ask me, why don't you dress more black? And I'm like, dude, what does that even mean?
Expectation, like you go somewhere and there's music. Oh, you should get out there and dance, because this is thing that all black people know how to dance. And I am not that person. You know, have rhythm. I don't have rhythm, so you have rhythm. I don't have rhythm, but there's this expectation. Oh, you know, you like fried chicken, or you like watermelon. Like, it's all these things that's associated with being black that people just naturally put on you, or like, yeah, it's all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it is so important that we hear this. We hear your experiences, because we need to know how our words trigger, how they affect, how our gestures or mannerisms make people feel, you know? And I want to take a moment as a pastor and say, thank you. Thank you for you guys for being a part of our leadership, to every person of every ethnicity that walks into our church and calls it home, that allows us to share a place of leadership in your life. I mean, that is a privilege that we honor, that we're so thankful for, that we do not take lightly. And it is only when we come together, I remember praying over our church, and I saw this just picture. I pray for our church to look like our city all the time. Like, that is a heartbeat of mine. And one day I was just praying, and I just saw this picture of looking out from the stage and seeing just this beautiful sea that reflected our community. And it was beautiful. And that is our goal, and that is our heart. So for every one of you who call Providence your home church, and you might have these feelings and you've pushed past those feelings to continue coming, that you have not let the posts or the words of one represent everyone, but instead have said, you know what, I'm going to allow friction, but I'm going to push through and be a part of this community. Thank you. Yeah. Like, you are what we need. You are what is going to make us better. That's what's going to heal our world, because it has to happen in the church. Yeah. Like, it's the only place it can happen, because we are unified in love. And even if you have different beliefs, even if you think differently, you don't have to believe to belong, because we are going to demonstrate a community of hope, of love and honor and respect. And you're giving us an opportunity to do that. You know, it's huge, and it is critical to where we're going and who we want to be.
And we just want to say thank you for continuing to fight for unity, to push past the offenses, the struggles, the things that you guys have had to deal with, and I know that other people have. And we just want to say thank you for continuing to show up. That we're not where we want to be, but we are working to get better. And I promise, as your pastor, that we will continue to try and remove every obstacle and every barrier that keeps people from walking in the unity that Jesus died to give us on the cross.
Well, we love you guys so much, and we're so thankful for you being with us through this time. And I hope that you will not, if things maybe rubbed on your conscience, maybe if they made you think a little bit, maybe if that little friction came, I hope you welcome it. It's not easy. These aren't easy conversations, but they are meaningful, significant conversations that will move us forward, and we need to have them. So I hope that this models for you something that you can do in your own life, that you can do with a coworker, with a friend, with a family member, that you can sit down and share and listen and hear one another, because I believe it will bring healing. It'll bring hope. And that's what we are about, is bringing hope that things will get better, that things can change if we all do our part. So thank you for joining us. And Josh, will you pray and close us out?
God, we come before you and we humble ourselves before you. God, I can only think of the words of Jehoshaphat when he said, God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. That as a community, as a city, as a nation, God, we look to you to bring the healing, the reconciliation, God, to put an end to injustice. God, we ask that you would give us supernatural wisdom and strategies to combat the systemic racism that has been a part of this nation from the very beginning. God, I pray that you would give every person watching the boldness and the courage to have those difficult conversations. God, that you would open our eyes to see the racism and the prejudice in our own hearts, God. And God, I pray that we would come through this, God, more unified, more in love with you. In Jesus' name, amen.